Next up, we got George Carlin, pro-life, abortion, and the sanctity of life. That's next up. Let's get into it.
Up on the track, and I wish they understood. Rather hate it for myself than be acting like I should. Got my haters mad, cause they see me in my bag. I remember when they left.
Hey, I was good with you. Wagwan, gang. Alright, so boom. Welcome back to the channel. Hope y'all subscribe, like the video. You should subscribe to the channel and ultimately... No, hold up. Rewind. You should like the video and subscribe because this channel is all about providing you with a daily dose of edutainment. My goal on this channel is to provide you with content that makes you laugh, brightens up your day, but also content that makes you think and actually gives you knowledge and insights that you can apply to your own personal life and make it better. So I'm all about self-mastery, self-education, self-development, while enjoying the process with laughter along the way, you know what I'm saying? So this is a part of my channel where I react to comedy, just you and I, chill. We got George Carlin, Bill Burr, Patrice O'Neal, Doug Stanhope, all the GOATs and up-and-coming comedians as well, right? So, about to get into it. But real quick though, if anybody watching this is struggling with back pain and having issues just leaving that tension in their back, lower back, just a back is like, you know, one of those organs that you can't really self-massage as much as you would like, right? You may want to know what are certain things that you can be doing on a consistent basis, and a back pain coach, for even, because that's the thing, is back pain coaches. There's things for everything in this world. The way our world's set up, or there's a coach for any type of thing, I should say, right? So if any of y'all are struggling with back pain, maybe your job requires you to sit down a lot, or there's not a lot of movement in your job, and that's causing that lower back pain and upper back pain and rib pain, all that stuff. Check out the link in the description. The link is called a back pain coach. He'll just give you more insights and more in-depth information about how to relieve all that tension and stress in your body. Because I've experienced it myself, back pain is not a joking matter whatsoever. So definitely subscribe, like the video, subscribe to the channel, or I'll punch you in the throat. I'll just play it. Let's get into it. George Carlin, pro-life, abortion, and the sanctity of life. This cat, always comes through with hard-hitting information.
Why is it that most of the people who are against abortion are people you wouldn't want to fuck in the first place?
He's already on his BS.
Boy, these conservatives are really something, aren't they? They're all in favor of the unborn. They will do anything for the unborn. But once you're born, you're on your own. Pro-life conservatives are obsessed with the fetus from conception to 9 months. After that, they don't want to know about you. They don't want to hear from you. No, nothing. No neonatal care, no daycare, no Head Start, no school lunch, no food stamps, no welfare, no nothing. If you're pre-born, you're fine. If you're preschool, you're fucked. Conservatives don't give a shit about you until you reach military age. Then they think you are just fine, just what they've been looking for. Conservatives want live babies so they can raise them to be dead soldiers. Pro-life. These people aren't pro-life, they're killing doctors. What kind of pro-life is that? What, they'll do anything they can to save a fetus, but if it grows up to be a doctor, they just might have to kill it? They're not pro-life. You know what they are? They're anti-woman. Simple as it gets. Anti-woman. They don't like them. They don't like women. They believe a woman's primary role is to function as a broodmare for the state. Pro-life. You don't see many of these white anti-abortion women volunteering to have any black fetuses transplanted into their uteruses, do you? No, you don't see them adopting a whole lot of crack babies, do you? No, that might be something Christ would do. And you won't see a lot of these pro-life people dousing themselves in kerosene and lighting themselves on fire. You know, morally committed religious people in South Vietnam knew how to stage a goddamn demonstration, didn't they? Hey. They knew how to put on a fucking protest. Light yourself on fire! Come on, you moral crusaders, let's see a little smoke to match that fire in your belly. Here's another question I have. How come when it's us, it's an abortion, and when it's a chicken, it's an omelet? Are we so much better than chickens all of a sudden? When did this happen, that we passed chickens in goodness? Name 6 ways we're better than chickens. See, nobody can do it. You know why? Because chickens are decent people. You don't see chickens hanging around in drug gangs, do you? You don't see a chicken strapping some guy to a chair and hooking up his nuts to a car battery, do you? When's the last chicken you heard about came home from work and beat the shit out of his hand, huh? Doesn't happen, because chickens are decent people. Well, let's get back to this abortion shit. Now, is a fetus a human being? This seems to be the central question.
Yeah.
Well, if a fetus is a human being, how come the census doesn't count them? If a fetus is a human being, how come when there's a miscarriage they don't have a funeral? If a fetus is a human being, how come people say we have 2 children and 1 on the way, instead of saying we have 3 children? People say life begins at conception. I say life began about 1 billion years ago, and it's a continuous process. Continuous, just keeps rolling along. Rolling. I say, you know something? Listen, you can go back further than that. What about the carbon atoms? Huh? Human life could not exist without carbon. So is it just possible that maybe we shouldn't be burning all this coal? Just looking for a little consistency here in these anti-abortion arguments.
Facts.
See, the really hardcore people will tell you life begins at fertilization. Fertilization when the sperm fertilizes the egg, which is usually a few moments after the man says, gee, honey, I was going to pull out, but the phone rang and it startled me. But even after the egg is fertilized, it's still 6 or 7 days before it reaches the uterus and pregnancy begins, and not every egg makes it that far. 80% of a woman's fertilized eggs are rinsed and flushed out of her body once a month during those delightful few days she has. They wind up on sanitary napkins, and yet they are fertilized eggs. So basically what these anti-abortion people are telling us is that any woman who's had more than 1 period is a serial killer. Consistency. Hey, if they really want to get serious, what about all the sperm that are wasted when the state executes a condemned man and one of these pro-life guys who's watching comes in his pants, huh? Here's a guy standing over there with his jockey shorts full of little Vinnies and Debbies, and nobody's saying a word to that guy.
Facts.
Not every ejaculation deserves a name. Now, speaking of consistency, Catholics, which I was until I reached the age of reason, Catholics and other Christians are against abortions, and they're against homosexuals. Well, who has less abortions than homosexuals? Leave these fucking people alone, for Christ's sake. Here is an entire class of people guaranteed never to have an abortion. And the Catholics and Christians are just tossing them aside. You'd think they'd make natural allies. Go look for consistency in religion. And speaking to my friends, the Catholics, when John Cardinal O'Connor of New York and some of these other cardinals and bishops have experienced their first pregnancies and their first labor pains and they've raised a couple of children on minimum wage, then I'll be glad to hear what they have to say about abortion. I'm sure it'll be interesting. Enlightening, too. But, in the meantime, what they ought to be doing is telling these priests who took a vow of chastity to keep their hands off the altar boys. Keep your hands to yourself, Father. You know? When Jesus said, suffer the little children come unto me, that's not what he was talking about. So you know what I tell these anti-abortion people? I say, hey, if you think a fetus is more important than a woman, try getting a fetus to wash the shit stains out of your underwear. For no pay and no pension. I tell them, think of an abortion as term limits. That's all it is. Biological term limits. But you know, the longer you listen to this abortion debate, the more you hear this phrase, sanctity of life. You've heard that. Sanctity of life. You believe in it? Personally, I think it's a bunch of shit. Well, I mean, life is sacred? Who said so? God? Hey, if you read history, you realize that God is one of the leading causes of death. Has been for thousands of years. Hindus, Muslims, Jews, Christians, all taking turns killing each other because God told them it was a good idea. The sword of God, the blood of the Lamb, vengeance is mine. Millions of dead motherfuckers. Millions of dead motherfuckers, all because they gave the wrong answer to the God question. You believe in God? No. Dead. You believe in God? Yes. You believe in my God? No. Dead. My God has a bigger dick than your God. Thousands of years, and all the best wars, too. The bloodiest, most brutal wars fought, all based on religious hatred, which is fine with me. Hey, anytime a bunch of holy people want to kill each other, I'm a happy guy. But don't be giving me all this shit about the sanctity of life. I mean, even if there were such a thing, I don't think it's something you can blame on God. Now, you know where the sanctity of life came from? We made it up. You know why? Because we're alive. Self-interest.
Yeah.
Living people have a strong interest in promoting the idea that somehow life is sacred. You don't see Abbott and Costello running around talking about this shit, do you? We're not hearing a whole lot from Mussolini on the subject. What's the latest from JFK? Not a goddamn thing. Because JFK, Mussolini, and Abbott and Costello are fucking dead. They're fucking dead. And dead people give less than a shit about the sanctity of life. Only living people care about it, so the whole thing grows out of a completely biased point of view. It's a self-serving, man-made bullshit story. It's one of these things we tell ourselves so we'll feel noble.
Feel nice.
Life is sacred. Makes you feel noble. Well, let me ask you this. If everything that ever lived is dead, and everything alive is going to die, where does the sacred part come in? I'm having trouble with that. Because, I mean, even with this stuff we preach about the sanctity of life, we don't practice.
George Carlin is a different type of comedian, bro. He's what I like to call a comedic philosopher. A comedic philosopher. You're just fortunate enough that he was a funny. You know, a lot of philosophers that, we don't really, we know of them, but we don't really go into their work, right? But because, it's kind of, to a certain extent, you could say philosophy is kind of boring, right? But here's a comedian / philosopher who really brought out some truths in what he said. The part about not being like the abortion, like whole abortion debate. Even now, when I think it was in Georgia, they said, I don't know, something going on in Georgia, saying that you're trying to ban abortion or whatever it is, like completely in the whole state. It's like, who's gonna take? Okay, so if you're gonna ban abortion, like who's taking care of the kids then? Because obviously, if they wanted to have an abortion, they didn't have the finances, the wealth, or whatever, or the emotional bandwidth to take care of the kids. So you're gonna what? Give birth to the kid and then put them in a foster system. And we know how most kids in foster systems end up turning out. They don't really, ideally, they're not the ideal upstanding citizens that you care about.
I think I'm about to steal!
He said, we don't care about you up until the point that you're born. And then we don't care about you again until you can serve in the military. Holy, bro. The abortion debate, there's so many different levels to it. It's ridiculous. But yo, George Carlin. I think, I'll replay the part that really stood out to me again, right here. I think that main argument right here is what really stood out to me the most.
Is a fetus a human being? This seems to be the central question. Well, if a fetus is a human being, how come the census doesn't count them? If a fetus is a human being, how come when there's a miscarriage, they don't have a funeral? If a fetus is a human being, how come people say we have 2 children and 1 on the way, instead of saying we have 3 children?
But yeah, bro, George Carlin is the ultimate GOAT. You want to watch more of me and George Carlin together? Chill with me, react to George Carlin together. I will have a couple more videos linked in my description and pinned comment. And again, if any of y'all are struggling with back pain or back issues and really want to relieve that tension and stress in your body properly, that the proper way to really not only cure whatever you're struggling with right now, but also prevent, because they say prevention is the best cure, right? So prevention and cure for your current stress and back pain. Click the link in the description and pinned comment for the back pain coach free video and more detailed information about how to relieve that tension and stress. But yeah, God bless, much love, peace and joy, namaste. And always remember, if it doesn't feed you, don't water it. What you're watching, what you're listening to, what you're eating, because our diet is more than just what we eat. It's everything that we consume. I appreciate you. Deuces.